Don't discipline my daughters, Matthew. Take care of your own. The words hung in the air like poison. I stood there in our living room, my hands still trembling from what had just happened, and watched my wife, Amanda, cross her arms like she'd just delivered the final word in a debate she'd already won. Behind her, Lily and Sophie stood with their chins up, defiant, like I was the villain in some story they'd rewritten without telling me. 10 minutes ago, I'd walked into the kitchen and found Sophie, my 11-year-old, no, Amanda's 11-year-old apparently, holding a pair of scissors over her 14-year-old sister's head. Lily was crying, clutching a chunk of her own hair that had just been cut off and was now scattered across the tile floor like evidence of a crime. Sophie, what are you doing? I'd asked, my voice calm but firm. I'd learned over the years that yelling never worked with these girls. She took my phone, Sophie snapped, not even looking at me. So I'm giving her a makeover. Lily sobbed harder. I didn't take it. I was just charging mine next to hers. I stepped forward and gently took the scissors from Sophie's hand. That's enough. You don't solve problems by hurting people. Apologize to your sister. That's when Amanda stormed in from the hallway, still in her scrubs from her hospital shift. What's going on? Sophie cut Lily's hair, I explained, keeping my tone even. I'm handling it. Amanda's eyes flickered to the scissors in my hand, then to Sophie's face, which had suddenly transformed from defiant to innocent, her bottom lip quivering like she was the victim. Matthew was yelling at me, Sophie whispered. I wasn't yelling. I never yelled. But Amanda's face hardened anyway. Don't discipline my daughters, Matthew. Take care of your own. The room went silent. Even the girls looked confused for a second, like they weren't sure they'd heard her right. I know I wasn't sure. My chest tightened and for a moment I couldn't breathe. Take care of your own. Your own. Not ours. Not the girls I'd raised for 6 years, paid private school tuition for, sat up with during nightmares, taught to ride bikes, drove to soccer practice, helped with homework. My own. I looked at Amanda, searching her face for some sign that she didn't mean it, that it was just the exhaustion talking, that she'd take it back. But her jaw was set, her eyes cold. She meant every word. I picked up my keys from the counter. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped them. Where are you going? Amanda scoffed, her voice dripping with condescension. To pout? To play the victim like you always do? I didn't answer. I couldn't. If I opened my mouth, I wasn't sure what would come out. Rage, tears, or something worse. So I walked to the door, my vision blurring at the edges. As I reached for the handle, I heard Sophie whisper to Lily behind me, "Why does he look so weird?" Lily shrugged. Who cares? I stepped outside and closed the door behind me. The cool night air hit my face but I barely felt it. I got into my car, started the engine and sat there for a moment, staring at the house I'd paid for, the life I'd built, the family I thought was mine. Then I drove away. Amanda had no idea I was never coming back. Please kindly like, share and subscribe for more interesting videos. Amanda expected me home by midnight. I know because she told me later, after everything fell apart, that she'd stayed up until 1 a.m. pacing the kitchen, rehearsing the lecture she was going to give me about storming off like a child. She said she'd even practiced the exact tone she'd use, disappointed but forgiving, like a parent scolding a toddler who'd thrown a tantrum at the grocery store. But I didn't come home at midnight. I didn't come home at all. I checked into a Holiday Inn 20 miles outside of town, the kind of place where no one asks questions and the walls are thin enough to hear the couple next door arguing about money. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at my phone as it lit up over and over. Amanda's name flashed across the screen. Call after call. Text after text. Where are you? This is ridiculous, Matthew. You're being dramatic. Come home. I turned the phone off and lay back on the cheap comforter that smelled like industrial detergent and other people's lives. For the first time in 6 years, I felt something I hadn't allowed myself to feel. Relief. The kind of relief that comes when you finally stop holding your breath underwater. The next morning I called my lawyer. His name was Richard Patel, a sharp-eyed man in his 50s who'd handled my late mother's estate 2 years ago. Matthew, he said when he picked up, surprise in his voice. I wasn't expecting to hear from you. What's going on? I need you to freeze all joint accounts, I said. My voice sounded strange to me, flat, emotionless, like I was reading from a script. File for legal separation. I want everything documented. There was a pause. Are you sure about this? I closed my eyes and saw Amanda's face again, heard her voice. Take care of your own. I'm sure. All right. I'll need you to come in and sign some paperwork. And Matthew? He hesitated. Whatever happened, I'm sorry. I hung up and sat in that hotel room for another hour, staring at the wall. My phone was still off. I imagined Amanda at home, probably irritated but not worried yet, probably telling the girls I'd be back soon, that I just needed to cool off. She had no idea what was coming. By day 2 I'd signed the papers. Richard moved fast, he always did. All joint accounts frozen pending legal review. Credit cards canceled. The mortgage payment, which was due in 5 days and came out of my personal account, was redirected. I transferred enough money into a separate account to cover my own expenses for 6 months, maybe more if I was careful. Then I went to St. Catherine's Prep. Principal Harmon was a stern woman with silver hair and reading glasses that hung on a chain around her neck. She'd always liked me. I'd volunteered at school fundraisers, chaperoned field trips, showed up to parent-teacher conferences even when Amanda was too tired from her shifts. "Mr. Collins," she said, standing when I entered her office. "What brings you in today?" I sat down across from her, my hands folded in my lap. "I need to make a change to the tuition account for Lily and Sophie." Her smile faded slightly. "What kind of change?" "I'm no longer financially responsible for them," I said, and the words tasted like ash in my mouth. "They're not my biological children, and their mother has made it clear I'm not their father. I'd like all records to reflect that I'm stepping back from any financial obligations." Principal Harmon's face went pale. "Matthew, I don't understand. You've been?" "I know what I've been," I interrupted quietly. "But things have changed. The tuition for this semester hasn't been paid yet. That's $18,000. Amanda will need to handle it." She stared at me for a long moment, and I could see the questions forming behind her eyes, but she didn't ask them. Maybe she could see something in my face that stopped her. "All right," she finally said. "I'll make the notation." I stood to leave, and as I reached the door, she called after me. "Matthew? Whatever's going on. I hope you're okay." I nodded but didn't turn around. I wasn't okay. I didn't know if I'd ever be okay again. But I was done being invisible. That afternoon, Amanda called St. Catherine's. I know because Richard told me later that the school had contacted him, confused about whether to honor my request. He confirmed it. Legally, I had every right. I'd never formally adopted the girls. Amanda had stalled on changing their last names, insisting they keep their father's name for their identity. I'd agreed because I loved her, because I thought it didn't matter. Turns out it mattered. By the time Amanda hung up with Principal Harmon, I was sitting in my new apartment across town. A small one-bedroom with white walls and no memories. My phone was still off. I didn't want to hear her voice. I didn't want to hear her excuses or her anger or whatever performance she'd put on to get me to come back. I just wanted silence. And for the first time in 6 years, I had it. Amanda's phone rang at 10:47 a.m. on day 3. She told me later, much later when we were sitting across from each other in that cafe and she was trying to piece together where everything went wrong, that she'd been in the middle of folding laundry when it happened. She said she almost didn't answer because she didn't recognize the number, but something made her pick up. "Mrs. Collins?" The voice on the other end was clipped, professional. "Principal Harmon." "Yes, this is she," Amanda said, tucking the phone between her shoulder and ear as she folded one of Sophie's shirts. "This is Principal Harmon from St. Catherine's Prep. I'm calling regarding tuition for Lily and Sophie." Amanda froze mid-fold. "Tuition? What about it?" "We haven't received payment for this semester. That's $18,000. Our records show the account was flagged by Mr. Collins 2 days ago, and if payment isn't received by this Friday, I'm afraid the girls will need to be withdrawn from the school." The shirt slipped from Amanda's hands. "I'm sorry, what?" "There must be some mistake. Matthew handles the tuition. He always." "Mr. Collins contacted us personally," Principal Harmon interrupted, her tone turning colder. "He stated that he's no longer financially responsible for non-biological dependents. He requested that all records reflect this change immediately." Non-biological dependents. The words hit Amanda like a slap. She sank onto the couch, her legs suddenly unable to hold her weight. He said that?" "Yes, ma'am." "I'm very sorry, but we do need to resolve this by Friday. Will you be able to make the payment?" Amanda's mouth opened, but no sound came out. $18,000. She had maybe $3,000 in her personal checking account, the one Matthew didn't have access to, the one she kept just in case. Just in case of what, she'd never really defined. But $18,000? She'd need to drain her savings, max out her credit cards, and even then she'd come up short. I need to call you back," Amanda stammered. "Of course. But Mrs. Collins, Friday is." Amanda hung up. Her hands were shaking so badly she nearly dropped the phone. Non-biological dependence. He'd actually said that. To the school. To the principal who'd watched him volunteer at bake sales and science fairs and every single parent event for 6 years. She tried to call me. Straight to voicemail. She texted, "We need to talk." Call me. Nothing. She tried again. And again. Each call went straight to that same robotic voice. "The person you are trying to reach is not available." That's when Sophie walked into the living room, her backpack slung over one shoulder, home early from a half day at school. "Mom? You okay?" Amanda looked up, her face pale. "I'm fine, honey." But Sophie had always been perceptive in the worst ways, the kind of kid who could smell weakness like a shark smells blood. She cocked her head, studying her mother. "You don't look fine. What's wrong?" "Nothing. Just grown-up stuff." "Is it about Matthew?" Sophie asked, and there was something in her voice, not concern exactly, but curiosity. "He's still not back?" Amanda shook her head, unable to form words. Sophie shrugged and headed toward the stairs, but then she paused, one hand on the railing. "Hey Mom, what does non-biological dependent mean?" Amanda's blood turned to ice. "Where did you hear that?" "I was walking past Principal Harmon's office yesterday," Sophie said casually, like she was discussing the weather. "I heard her on the phone with someone. She said something about Matthew and non-biological dependence." Sophie turned around fully now, her eyes narrowing. "What does that mean?" Amanda opened her mouth, then closed it. "How do you explain to your 11-year-old daughter that the man who raised her, who tucked her in at night and made her pancakes every Saturday morning, isn't actually her father? How do you explain that you've spent 6 years keeping that distance intentional, that you never let him get too close because you were terrified he'd leave like the last one did?" "It's complicated," Amanda finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Does it mean Matthew's not our real dad?" Sophie pressed, and now Lily appeared at the top of the stairs, her hair still uneven from where Sophie had cut it, her eyes wide. "What?" Lily said, coming down slowly. "What are you talking about?" Sophie crossed her arms, suddenly looking much older than 11. "Principal Harmon said something about non-biological dependence. That's us, isn't it? Matthew's not actually our dad." The silence that followed was suffocating. Amanda could hear the clock ticking on the wall, the hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen, the sound of her own heartbeat pounding in her ears. "Your father, your biological father, is Derek," Amanda said finally, the words scraping out of her throat. "I've told you that before. Matthew is your stepfather. But he adopted us, right?" Lily asked, her voice small and scared. "You said he adopted us." Amanda felt the ground shifting beneath her, like she was standing on ice that was cracking in every direction. "We were going to. We talked about it. But I wanted you girls to keep your father's last name. For your identity. So he's not legally our dad," Sophie finished, her voice flat. "That's what you're saying." Amanda couldn't look at them. She stared down at her hands, at the wedding ring that suddenly felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. "Where is he?" Lily asked, and now her voice was shaking. "Why isn't he coming home?" "I don't know," Amanda whispered. And for the first time since I'd walked out that door 3 days ago, she felt the first cold finger of real fear trace its way down her spine. Because she was starting to realize that maybe, just maybe, I wasn't coming back. Amanda sat alone in the kitchen that night after the girls had gone to bed, a glass of wine in her hand that she hadn't touched. Her mind kept spiraling back 8 years, to a version of herself she tried so hard to forget. She'd been 29, a single mother working double shifts as an ER nurse, her hands raw from constant washing, her feet aching in shoes she couldn't afford to replace. Lily had been 6, Sophie 3. Their father, Derek, had walked out on a Tuesday morning, kissed the girls goodbye like it was any other day and never came back. No explanation. No forwarding address. Just gone. He left behind $40,000 in credit card debt, a lease Amanda couldn't break, and 2 little girls who kept asking when Daddy was coming home. She remembered crying in the hospital bathroom between shifts, her face pressed against the cold tile wall, wondering how she was going to survive. Then she met Matthew at a hospital fundraiser. He was quiet, almost invisible in a room full of loud doctors and administrators. He wore a simple gray suit and stood near the back, holding a glass of water. When she'd been cornered by a drunk donor making inappropriate comments, Matthew had appeared beside her like a ghost and said, "Excuse me, they need you in the kitchen." He'd made it up. There was no emergency. He'd just seen she needed an exit. They talked for 3 hours that night. He told her he was a software engineer, that he'd lost his mother recently, that he didn't have much family. She told him about the girls, about Derek, about the debt. She expected him to make an excuse and leave. Instead he said, "You're stronger than you think." Within 6 months they were dating. Within a year married. Matthew paid off every cent of Derek's debt without blinking. He moved them into a real house with a yard and a swing set. He enrolled the girls in St. Catherine's Prep, the kind of school Amanda had only dreamed about. He showed up to every soccer game, every parent-teacher conference, every midnight fever and scraped knee. But Amanda never fully let him in. She kept Derek's last name for the girls. She corrected people who called Matthew their father. She told herself it was about preserving their identity, but the truth was darker. She was terrified that if she gave him everything, if she let the girls love him completely, he'd leave just like Derek did. So she built walls. Small ones at first, then bigger. Until the night she told him to take care of his own, and the walls finally crushed everything beneath them. Now, sitting in the dark kitchen, Amanda realized the cruelest irony of all. She'd been so afraid of losing him that she'd pushed him away herself. Sophie couldn't sleep. It was past midnight, and her mind kept replaying Principal Harmon's words, her mother's pale face, the way Lily had cried herself to sleep in the next room. She got out of bed and padded down the hallway to her mother's room. The door was cracked open. Amanda had fallen asleep on top of the covers, still in her scrubs, the empty wine glass on the nightstand. Sophie hesitated, then slipped inside. She wasn't sure what she was looking for. Answers, maybe? Proof that none of this was real. Her eyes landed on the closet. She'd seen her mother put things in there before, things she didn't want the girls to find. Birthday presents. Report cards she was disappointed in. Sophie opened it carefully, quietly, and started searching. That's when she found the shoebox. Inside were papers, official-looking documents with fancy letterheads and signatures. A divorce decree, Amanda Christine Martin versus Derek James Martin. A restraining order dated 7 years ago. Medical bills with Derek's name marked unpaid in red stamps. And at the bottom, a letter. Sophie unfolded it with shaking hands. The handwriting was neat, precise. Matthew's handwriting. Dear Amanda, I know you're scared to let go of their past. I see it every time someone calls me their father and you correct them. Every time you insist on keeping Derek's last name for them. I understand why, you're protecting them from being hurt again. But I need you to know something. I'm not going anywhere. I don't care about biology or paperwork or last names. Lily and Sophie are my daughters because I choose them to be. Every morning I wake up and make that choice again. I'll love them like they're mine because to me they already are. I'll always be here. Matthew. The letter was dated 4 years ago. Sophie's hands trembled so badly the paper rustled. She heard footsteps and quickly shoved everything back into the box except the letter. Lily appeared in the doorway, her eyes red and swollen. What are you doing? Lily whispered. Sophie handed her the letter without a word. She watched her sister's face crumble as she read it, watched the tears start falling again. We have to find him, Lily said, her voice breaking. We have to tell him we're sorry. But Sophie was already turning back to the closet, pulling out her mother's laptop. She knew the password. Amanda used the same one for everything, the girls' birthdays. She opened it, her heart pounding, and found a folder labeled, Matthew, Expenses. Inside were hundreds of files. PDFs of tuition receipts spanning 6 years. $108,000 total. Medical bills for braces, sports physicals, emergency room visits. Summer camp registrations. Dance class fees. Soccer league payments. Receipts for school supplies, winter coats, birthday parties, family vacations to Disney World and the Grand Canyon. Every single expense paid by Matthew. Every single one. Sophie scrolled through years of documents, her vision blurring, her stomach twisting into knots. At the bottom was a subfolder titled, Adoption Papers, Incomplete. She clicked it. Inside was a single Word document, a draft of adoption paperwork that was never filed, never signed, never finished. In the margins were notes in Matthew's handwriting. Ask Amanda about name change. Wait until she's ready. Don't push. Sophie closed the laptop and looked at her sister. They didn't need to say it out loud. They both knew the truth now. They'd spent 6 years treating the only real father they'd ever had like he was nothing. Like he was the help. Like he didn't matter. And now he was gone. Amanda drove to Matthew's office building at dawn, her eyes bloodshot, her hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly her knuckles were white. She hadn't slept. She'd found Sophie and Lily asleep in her room that morning, the laptop open beside them, the letter from Matthew spread across the comforter. She knew they knew everything now. The receptionist at Matthew's company looked up as Amanda burst through the glass doors. "Can I help you?" "I need to see Matthew Collins," Amanda said, her voice raw. "It's an emergency." The receptionist's expression shifted to something like pity. "I'm sorry, ma'am. Mr. Collins took an indefinite leave of absence 3 days ago. We don't have any information on when he'll be back." Amanda felt the floor tilt beneath her. "Do you know where he went?" "I'm not authorized to give out that information." She tried his brother next, drove 45 minutes to his house in the suburbs. She knocked until her knuckles hurt. No answer. She called his phone 53 times that day. Every single call went to voicemail. By late afternoon, Amanda found herself sitting in a grocery store parking lot, sobbing so hard she couldn't breathe. A woman in her 60s, with kind eyes and gray hair pulled into a bun, knocked gently on her window. "Honey, are you all right?" Amanda rolled down the window, mascara streaking her face. "I ruined everything," she choked out. "I pushed away the only man who ever loved my daughters." The woman studied her for a moment. "Then why'd you do it?" And there it was, the question Amanda had been avoiding for 8 years. She wiped her face with shaking hands. "Because I was scared," she whispered. "My first husband left without warning. Just walked out one day and never came back. And when Matthew came into our lives, he was so good. Too good. I kept waiting for him to leave too." "So you pushed him out first," the woman said gently. Amanda nodded, unable to speak. "My father left when I was 9, Amanda continued, the words spilling out like a confession. "My mother remarried a man who resented me. He never hit me, never screamed, but he made it clear every single day that I wasn't his problem. That I was just there. Taking up space in his house, eating his food, costing him money." Her voice cracked. "I swore my daughters would never feel that. Never feel like they were a burden to the man in their house. So I kept Matthew at a distance. I corrected people who called him their dad. I kept their father's name. I told myself I was protecting them." "But you were protecting yourself," the woman said softly. Amanda closed her eyes. "And now he's gone. And they know. They know everything, and I don't know how to fix it." The woman reached through the window and squeezed Amanda's shoulder. "My son's a private investigator. Maybe he can help you find him." She pulled a business card from her purse and pressed it into Amanda's palm. Amanda stared at it, her vision blurred with tears. For the first time in 6 years, she had no idea what came next. "I sat in my new apartment. 1 bedroom, bare walls, second-hand furniture, and stared at my laptop screen." Richard's face filled the video call, his expression serious but not unkind. "Matthew, legally you're in the clear," he said. Amanda's own words, recorded on your phone, "Take care of your own. That constitutes abandonment of marital partnership. You have every right to full separation and asset division." I nodded, but I wasn't really listening. My eyes kept drifting to the drawer beside me. I knew what was inside. I'd put it there yesterday and told myself I wouldn't look at it again. "Matthew?" Richard's voice pulled me back. "Are you sure about this? This is a big step." "I'm sure," I said, but my voice sounded hollow even to my own ears. "All right. I'll file the paperwork tomorrow. And Matthew? Whatever happened, I'm sorry. I know you loved those girls." I ended the call and sat in the silence of the apartment. The walls were too white, too clean. There were no crayon marks, no family photos, no sounds of arguing or laughter or life. Just silence. I opened the drawer. Inside was a single photo, bent at the corners from being carried in my wallet for years. It was from 3 years ago. Disney World, all 4 of us crammed into the frame in front of Cinderella's castle. Sophie was hugging my waist, her face lit up with joy. Lily had fallen asleep on my shoulder during the fireworks, her small hand still clutching my shirt. Amanda stood beside me, smiling, but even in the photo I could see it. The distance in her eyes, the way she angled her body just slightly away from mine. I'd spent 6 years pretending I didn't see it. Pretending it didn't matter. Telling myself that if I just loved them enough, gave enough, showed up enough, eventually Amanda would let me all the way in. But she never did. My phone buzzed, another text from Amanda. I didn't read it. I'd stopped reading them after the first dozen. They all said the same thing in different words. "Come home. We need to talk. Please." What she didn't understand was that I couldn't go back. Not because I didn't love them, I did, so much it physically hurt, but because going back meant becoming invisible again. It meant being tolerated instead of chosen. It meant watching Lily and Sophie grow up thinking that love was conditional, that fathers were interchangeable, that I was just the man who paid the bills. I thought about my own childhood. My mother remarried when I was 7. My stepfather, Tom, wasn't cruel, he just wasn't interested. He had 2 biological kids with my mom, and I watched from the sidelines as he poured all his attention into them. He went to their baseball games but not mine. He helped them with homework but told me to figure it out myself. He hugged them goodnight but gave me a nod from across the room. I grew up feeling like a ghost in my own home. Loved conditionally. Appreciated only when I was useful. When I married Amanda, I swore I'd never make Lily and Sophie feel that way. I gave them everything, not just money but time, presence, love. I showed up. Every single time. But Amanda's words had triggered every wound I'd spent 30 years trying to heal. Take care of your own. In one sentence, she told me what I'd always feared was true. I was never really part of the family. I was just the man who paid for it. I put the photo face down in the drawer and closed it. Tomorrow I'd figure out how to move forward. Tonight, I just needed to survive the silence. I heard the knock at 4:17 p.m. on a Thursday. I wasn't expecting anyone. Richard wasn't coming by and I hadn't told anyone else where I was staying. I opened the door and froze. Lily and Sophie stood in the hallway, both of them looking smaller than I remembered. Lily's hair was still uneven, and Sophie's eyes were red like she'd been crying for days. "How did you find me?" I asked quietly. "Uncle James told us," Lily said, her voice barely above a whisper. "My brother. Of course. He'd always had a soft spot for the girls. I should have closed the door. Should have told them it wasn't a good time. But I stepped aside and let them in. They stood awkwardly in my tiny living room, taking in the bare walls, the single couch, the absence of everything that made a place feel like home. "Matthew," Sophie started, and then her voice broke. "We're so sorry." I kept my face neutral, my arms crossed. I couldn't let them see how much this hurt. "Sorry for what?" "For everything," Lily said, tears streaming down her face. "For treating you like you didn't matter. For being awful. For not seeing," she couldn't finish. Sophie pulled something from her backpack, the letter I'd written to Amanda 4 years ago. "We found this, and we found all the receipts. Everything you paid for. Everything you did for us." I looked at the letter and felt something crack inside my chest. "Your mom shouldn't have let you see that." "We needed to see it," Sophie said fiercely. "We needed to know the truth. That you're our dad. The only real dad we've ever had." I had to look away. I couldn't let them see my eyes watering. "Your mom made it pretty clear I'm not your dad." "She was wrong," Lily said, stepping closer. "She was so wrong, Matthew. You're the one who showed up. You're the one who stayed. You're the one who—" Her voice broke into sobs. I wanted to hug her. Every instinct in my body screamed to wrap both of them in my arms and tell them it was okay, that I forgave them, that we'd figure this out. But I couldn't. Because if I did, I'd fall right back into the same pattern. I'd go back to being invisible, to being tolerated, to being the man who gave everything and got nothing in return. "You're old enough to understand respect," I said, and my voice came out harder than I intended. "I gave you everything and you treated me like the help. Like I was just there to pay bills and drive you places." "We know," Sophie whispered. "We know, and we hate ourselves for it." "Your mom taught you that," I said, and the words felt like poison. "She taught you that I didn't matter. That I was just temporary." Lily shook her head violently. "No. She was scared. She told us she was scared you'd leave like our biological father did. So she kept you at a distance. But that's not your fault. That's hers." I closed my eyes. "I can't come back." "Why not?" Sophie's voice cracked. "We'll do better. We'll prove it to you. We'll—" "Because your mom made it clear where I stand," I interrupted. "And maybe she's right. Maybe I'm not your dad. Maybe I never was." The silence that followed was unbearable. Lily stepped forward and grabbed my hand. Hers was so small, so cold. "You are our dad," she said, looking up at me with red, swollen eyes. "You're the only one who ever showed up. The only one who stayed. And we're so sorry we didn't see it sooner." I felt my resolve crumbling. But I couldn't let it. Not yet. "I need time," I said quietly. "I need to figure out who I am without all of this." They both nodded, tears streaming down their faces. As they turned to leave, Sophie looked back at me one last time. "We love you, Dad." The word hit me like a bullet. Dad. They'd never called me that before. Not once in 6 years. I closed the door and leaned against it, my chest heaving, and let myself cry for the first time since I'd left. Amanda found the old phone in the back of her nightstand drawer. It was Matthew's previous phone, the one he'd upgraded from 2 years ago. She kept it, meaning to recycle it, but never got around to it. Now, desperate for any clue about where he might have gone, She plugged it in and waited for it to power on. The screen lit up. No password, he'd removed it before switching phones. She scrolled through old photos, old text, searching for anything that might help. That's when she saw it, a video file dated 2 years ago, titled, Anniversary. Their anniversary. The one she'd completely forgotten because she'd been pulling a double shift. She'd come home at midnight to find Matthew asleep on the couch, a homemade dinner cold on the table. She pressed play. Matthew's face filled the screen. He was sitting in their bedroom, the camera propped on the dresser, smiling but looking nervous. "Hey Amanda," he said softly. "I know you're working tonight and I know you probably won't see this for a while, but I wanted to say something while I had the courage." Amanda's hands started shaking. "I love you," Matthew continued. "I know you don't say it much and that's okay. I know you have your reasons. But I need you to know something important. I don't love Lily and Sophie because I have to. I don't love them because I married you or because it's the right thing to do." He paused, his eyes getting glassy. "I love them because they're ours. Because every soccer game, every report card, every nightmare in the middle of the night, I'm there because I choose to be. Because being their dad is the greatest honor of my life." His voice cracked. "I know you keep your guard up. I know you're scared I'll leave like Derek did. But Amanda, I'm not going anywhere. I'm never going anywhere. I just hope that one day you'll trust that you'll let me all the way in instead of keeping me at arm's length." He smiled sadly. "I hope one day you'll see that you don't have to protect the girls from me. Because I'm not the enemy. I'm on your side. I've always been on your side." The video ended. Amanda let out a sound that was half sob, half scream. She'd never seen this video. Never knew it existed. And now, watching it 2 years too late, she realized the devastating truth. Matthew had been trying to tell her all along. He'd been begging her, in his quiet way, to let him in. And she'd kept pushing him away. She thought about 3 years ago, talking to her sister on the phone while Matthew was outside mowing the lawn. "He's great with the girls," Amanda had said. "But they're mine. I don't want him thinking he's their real dad. I don't want him getting too attached." She hadn't known Matthew was standing in the hallway, just out of sight, listening to every word. He'd never said anything. Just kept showing up. Kept loving. Kept giving. Until the day she finally broke him. Amanda grabbed her phone with trembling hands and texted Matthew. "I'm sorry. Please. Let me fix this. Let me prove I see you now. Please come home." She watched the screen. 3 dots appeared. Her heart leaped. Then they disappeared. No response. She tried calling. Straight to voicemail. She tried again. And again. Nothing. Amanda collapsed on her bed, clutching the phone to her chest, and sobbed until she had nothing left. The call came at 9:03 a.m. on a Monday. Amanda's lawyer, Patricia Reynolds, a sharp woman in her 40s who'd helped with the divorce from Derek years ago. "Amanda, we have a problem," Patricia said without preamble. Amanda's stomach dropped. "What kind of problem?" "Derek filed for emergency custody of Lily and Sophie yesterday." The room tilted. Amanda grabbed the kitchen counter to steady herself. "What? He hasn't seen them in 8 years. He has no rights. He's claiming that since Matthew is no longer in the picture and you're financially unstable, the school contacted him about unpaid tuition. Apparently, the girls need their biological father. He's remarried, has a stable home, a good income. And Amanda, his lawyer, is good. Really good." Amanda couldn't breathe. "This can't be happening." "He's scheduled a custody hearing for next month. We need to prepare. Can you demonstrate financial stability? Can you show the court you have a support system?" Amanda thought about her empty bank account, the mortgage she couldn't pay, the tuition she couldn't cover. She thought about Matthew's frozen accounts and disconnected phone. I don't know." "Then we have a serious problem," Patricia said quietly. "Because Derek's lawyer is going to argue that you're an unfit mother who can't provide for her children, and that their biological father, who has been absent but is now ready to step up, is the better option." After Amanda hung up, she sat in silence for 10 minutes, her mind racing. Then she did the only thing she could think of. She called Matthew. For the first time in a week he answered. "What do you want, Amanda?" His voice was flat, emotionless. "Derek is suing for custody," she said, her voice breaking. "He's trying to take the girls. Matthew, please. You're the only one who can help. You're the only one who—" "I'm not their father, remember?" Matthew said coldly. "You made that very clear." "I was wrong," Amanda sobbed. "I was so wrong. They need you. I need you. Please. I'll do anything." There was a long silence. Then, "I need to think about it." "Matthew." He hung up. Amanda stared at her phone, feeling the last piece of her world crumble into dust. I agreed to meet Amanda at a cafe 3 days later. Neutral ground. Somewhere public where I wouldn't break down, wouldn't let my emotions overrule my judgment. She was already there when I arrived, sitting in the back corner, her face pale and drawn like she hadn't slept in weeks. I sat down across from her without ordering anything. "Thank you for coming," she whispered. I didn't respond. Just waited. "Derek's hearing is in 3 weeks," she said, her hands wrapped around a coffee cup she hadn't touched. "If I lose, if he gets custody, Matthew, he doesn't want them because he loves them. He wants them because his new wife can't have kids and he sees this as an easy solution." "How do you know that?" "Because I know Derek," she said bitterly. "He didn't fight for them 8 years ago when it would have mattered. He's only fighting now because it's convenient." I thought about Lily and Sophie in that apartment, the way they'd looked at me, the way they'd called me dad. I thought about everything I'd given them, everything I'd sacrificed. And then I thought about Amanda's words, "Take care of your own." "You told me they weren't mine," I said quietly. Amanda's face crumpled. I know what I said. And I've regretted it every second since. Matthew, I was wrong. They're yours. They've always been yours. I was just too scared to admit I needed you." "Scared of what?" She took a shaky breath. "Scared that if I let you all the way in, if I let the girls love you completely, if I admitted that you're their father, you'd leave. Like Derek did. Like my stepfather made me feel when I was a kid. Like everyone always does." I remembered her childhood stories, the ones she told me years ago when we first started dating. Her father leaving when she was 9. Her mother's new husband making her feel invisible. "So you pushed me away first," I said. "Yes," she whispered. "And I destroyed everything in the process." I leaned back in my chair, staring at the ceiling. I thought about my own mother's words, spoken to me in the hospital 3 months before she died. She'd squeezed my hand with what little strength she had left and said, "Matthew, love isn't about biology. It's about showing up. Your stepfather never understood that. But you do. Promise me you'll never forget." I promised. And I'd kept that promise for 6 years. I'd shown up every single day, even when Amanda kept me at arm's length, even when the girls treated me like I was just there to pay bills, even when it hurt so much I wanted to walk away. The question was, could I keep showing up now? "I need time," I said finally. Amanda grabbed my hand across the table, her grip desperate. "We don't have time. The hearing is in 3 weeks. Matthew, please. I'll spend the rest of my life proving you matter. I'll change their last names. I'll finalize the adoption. I'll do whatever it takes. Just please don't let Derek take them." I looked at her, really looked at her, and saw something I'd never seen before, genuine fear. Not fear of losing control, but fear of losing her daughters. And despite everything, despite all the pain, I realized something. I still loved them. All 3 of them. "I'll think about it," I said, pulling my hand away. "But Amanda, if I do this, if I help you fight Derek, things have to change. Really change. No more keeping me at a distance. No more treating me like I'm temporary. I'm either their father or I'm not. You don't get to decide based on what's convenient." She nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I understand. I promise." I stood to leave and she grabbed my arm. "Matthew? Thank you. For not giving up on us completely." I didn't respond. I just walked out of the cafe and got in my car, my mind spinning with impossible choices. And sometimes the greatest love is the one that walks away, so it can come back stronger, wiser, and finally seen.